Courage is being able to face your fears, and many of us fear change. People, places, the world around us are constantly changing. Many look at change as an opportunity to give up, when actually it's an opportunity to grow. My name is Dr. Raymond, and I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist. 16 years ago today, I was actually sitting at home praying that I would someday have something positive to share with anybody that would listen. Shortly before turning 40 years of age, I was declared legally blind. Suddenly, my future was very dark. Thanks to technology, education, development, an amazing life, great family, friends, a solid faith, I'm here today to share with you my experience, strength, and hope, my prescription for dealing with change. I grew up in New York and had two great parents. They both worked two jobs early in my life, so I was taught the value of hard work. My sister and I were raised Catholic, so I have a solid spiritual foundation, and our house was filled with a lot of love. Early on in life, I actually had the expectations of going through life, having a life from start to finish filled with happiness. I also learned at a very young age that life is hard. Several events occurred in my life as a young man that influenced me for the rest of my life. The first occurred in 1969. Our hometown team, the New York Mets, went from last place to first place. And as a young male, all I wanted to do was play baseball for our hometown team, the New York Mets. 4 years later, the Mets made the World Series again, but they didn't win. Another event occurred that would have major impacts on me for the rest of my life. While walking home from school, I was struck by a car, shattered with my right leg and dreams of ever playing competitive sports. Since that time, I've had 9 operations on both my legs and my knees. The night before one of those operations, I was sitting in the x-ray department at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City. A group of doctors came in and presented my case, and they quickly left. I then observed a young resident, Dr. Feta, sit down next to me and said, "Ray, do you have any questions about what might be happening tomorrow?" I didn't know how to answer, so I then observed Dr. Feta take one hand and gently place it on my leg, and with a pen in the other hand began drawing the operation that would take place the following morning on that knee. Immediately, I felt the power of his touch, and I said, "This is what I want to do in life. I want to be a doctor." I enrolled at Siena College in upstate New York in the pre-med program. After my first semester, my advisor, Dr. LaRoe, said, "Ray, your grades aren't going to be good enough to get into medical school. You should be thinking of another career." Never forgetting Dr. Feta's touch, I asked for an opportunity to prove myself. I buckled down, and to this day, I'm so grateful that Dr. LaRoe believed in me because he gave me a second chance. I buckled down academically and began doing research with the doctors at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York. I applied to medical school, but didn't get in my first year. I was waitlisted at all the schools I applied to. Not forgetting Dr. Feta's touch, I didn't want to give up. I enrolled at St. John's University in the Graduate School of Biology full-time at night, continued to do research full-time during the day, and reapplied to medical school. Walking out of the interview at the New England College of Osteopathic Medicine in Maine, Dr. Novotny looked at me and said, "Hey, Ray, if you don't get into medical school this year, do you have any other plans?" I looked him in the eye and said, "I guess I'll see you again next year." 5 days later, on a day we call Good Friday, I received my acceptance letter and have since never looked back. My wife and I, Margaret, settled here in Rhode Island. Shortly after setting up practice, we celebrated the births of our daughters, Shannon and Olivia. Shortly after entering practice, my peers in the state of Rhode Island selected me one of the top physicians in the state, and I was so glad I never gave up on my dreams. At the age of 38, I started having some health problems. I had noticed I had some difficulty hearing, and I was diagnosed with bilateral hearing loss. It's partial, and to this day, I still wear hearing aids to hear clearly. As I approached the age of 40, I noticed I had problems reading small print. I said, "Geez, everybody says when you turn 40, you need reading glasses." 2 days before I turned 40, I stepped out of my shower, and I noticed I had difficulties focusing on my face to shave. I believe I completed that process by memory, got dressed, got in my car, and started driving to the hospital. As I pulled out of our driveway and reached the stop sign at the end of our cul-de-sac, I observed that I couldn't see the stop sign. I then observed and proceeded to do one of the stupidest things in my life. I challenged myself to drive to the hospital. As I made the gentle right-hand turn, I fortunately caught the brake lights of one of my neighbors. I followed those brake lights onto the highway. As soon as we got on the highway, that car took off, and I was stuck to right the right-hand lane. There was only 2 exits on the highway. I had flippets of normal vision, and I gently guided the car into the parking lot at the hospital, shutting it off for the very last time. I noticed that my fingertips were numb from grabbing that steering wheel, and I had perspired. I went into the hospital, called my secretary, and we canceled much of the day. I called my wife, and we went up to see an eye doctor that day, thinking I would simply need a prescription for glasses. After a lengthy evaluation, it wasn't a prescription I received, but I received the news that I was now legally blind and I could never drive or do procedures on patients again. I was devastated. I pulled out my life story from my back pocket. I don't ever remember reading this chapter. For the next several months, my wife and I, we went around the country doing further testing to find out what was wrong. I actually went to work every day, and although I didn't know how to use my vision that I had, my secretaries would read the patient records to me. I'd go into the room, evaluate the patients, and if they needed a procedure, I would refer them to a colleague to do so. In February of 2002, I was taught another valuable lesson in life. Not every relationship in life was made to last. My professional relationship was over. A wave of uneasiness came over me, and I had a sleepless night. And as the sun was coming up that night, and that early morning, I had memory of a conversation I had with a low vision specialist at Dr. Badula in Connecticut. Walking out of his visit, he said, "You know, Ray, it might be a matter of when, not if you could do procedures again." As soon as I got to the office that day, I had a sense of hope. I called Dr. Badula and I asked him, "What did you mean by that, Bill?" His experience was that if I could sit in front of a 20-inch monitor, that my vision would be corrected to 20/25, like wearing a set of glasses. At the same time, I received a phone call from the State Physicians Health Committee and said, "Ray, you're not going to believe this, but there was a group of doctors here that recredentialed doctors with difficulties. Their experience was that if you could do 30 procedures in front of fully sighted physicians, have your eyes examined regularly, and have your records reviewed, you would be deemed a safe practitioner." We then took our monitor, put it in the back of our procedure room at the hospital. For weeks, every morning, I would go to the hospital, sitting in the corner, watching other doctors do their procedures, and we would communicate back and forth what was being seen, what was being done. One early morning, a Dr. Candace Dyer said, "Ray, why don't you come over here and finish this procedure for me?" The room parted like the Red Sea. I'm not sure how I got to the position I did, but the monitor was where it should be. I'm not even sure how the gloves got on my hand, but it was like riding a bicycle when they put the scope back in my hand. With the lasers, I stared at that screen, and all of a sudden, Dr. Dyer looked at me and says, "Ray, what do you think of those polyps on the screen?" As I looked there, I could see no polyps. I could see nothing wrong. And suddenly, I got sick to my stomach. I says, "I can't do this. I can't put people at harm's way." I answered quietly, "I don't see any polyps." She said, "Good, because there aren't any." So Dr. Dyer was testing me. Word got out on the street that I might be recredentialed, and 60 patients volunteered to be my first. A good friend of mine, John, said, "Ray, it's because you had a good bucket of will." And I kept on thinking of a story I heard once about doing the right thing. A gentleman commented, "You know, every morning when you get ready for work and you take your shirt off the hanger and the hanger falls to the floor, the first thing I do is pick that hanger up. I put it back on the rack." And he said, "Yes, I get that. For years, I would be getting ready for work. My hanger would fall to the floor. I said, I'm going to deal with this later. At the end of the day, I'd step back into that closet with my bare feet, land right on that hanger, and experience exquisite pain. Not anymore. As soon as that hanger hits the ground, they put it right back on the rack there." After completing a rigorous credentialing process on April 18, 2002, I was deemed a safe practitioner and have never looked back. Since that time, my name appears back in Rhode Island Monthly Magazine as one of the top doctors in the state of Rhode Island, a magazine called Best Doctors of America, and I've won many Compassionate Care Awards. In 2012, articles were written, "How do you know your doctor's doing quality work?" And these articles were saying that doctors should be detecting precancerous polyps in 20 to 25% of their patients. With the help of our hospital, my polyp detection rate was 42%, nearly double what's expected for fully sighted physicians. That's thanks to technology. Last year, I was re-credentialed, and the state said, hey, Ray, let's bring in a group of doctors who don't know who you are, unbiased. A gentleman spent a day with me, and I did 13 cases, and at the end of the day, he commented that he praised my technique, and at the end, he talked to my medical director saying, Ray was seeing things that many of my colleagues in Pennsylvania would have missed. The accomplishment I'm most proud of, though, is being able to get back on the softball and soccer fields as my daughter's coaches. I may not have been able to see them get a base hit or score a goal, but as a parent, I was on the field with them. Several years ago, I read a quote from Henry Ford, and it went something like this, that experience is of extreme value in life. I believe that to be true if we're able to look at our experiences and learn from them. We grow by facing and correcting our errors and turning them into assets. Over the last 16 years, I've had an opportunity to look at my life and to see how I live it. Could I have done things differently? Absolutely, but it's progress, not perfection. But I also looked at it and realized that I live my life on the basis of 5 principles. I call them my prescription for dealing with change. The first is acceptance, 2, accountability, responsibility, passion, and purpose. Well, what about acceptance? I was taught the serenity prayer many years ago in a 12-step recovery program that said, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, what can I change? My vision and hearing loss. Every day when I look at my alarm clock and I can't see the numbers from my pillow, I accept my low vision and hearing, and I promise myself to bring my A game to everything I do that day. How about the things I can change? My attitude. I look at my attitude as my fine-tune button. If my attitude is cloudy, everything comes in a little darker. If my attitude is bright, everything comes in clearer. How about accountability? On a daily basis, I hold myself accountable to face my fears on a daily basis. I also, if I have wronged somebody, hold myself accountable and make amends to them. How about responsibility, number 3? This is the one that got me out of bed every day. The first responsibility I have was to our community and to our patients to care for them. More importantly, the responsibility to care for my wife and my children. More importantly, a responsibility to myself to fulfill my potential in life. It's for this reason that I had a plan B. There was always going to have to be a plan B. So I thought about becoming an entrepreneur. While eating ice cream one day, I started thinking, hey, you know what? I promote fiber on a daily basis. Only 3% of us get enough fiber for wellness. 90% of American households buy ice cream. Let's put the two together. So although I got my career back, I never gave up on the ice cream dream. With the help of my wife and an amazing team, we promoted and launched a product with benefits, an ice cream called Seriously Good Ice Cream. All natural, it's got benefits, it's got 23% of your daily fiber. But the second benefit, we hope to donate part of the profits to groups that help blind children so that they too can fulfill their potential in life. How about passion? If I didn't have passion for life and my career and what I do for a living, I never would have come over so many obstacles to get where I am today. If you love your work, you'll never have to work a day in your life. I believe that to be true. And purpose. I used to think my purpose in life was to find and care for my patients, provide for my family. But I believe my purpose in life is to find inner peace and serenity. Well, how do I do that? I take care of my mind, my body, and my spirit, my 3 events of life's triathlon. And I also got rid of that word expectations. To have expectations is to live in fear. To fear losing something you don't have or lose something you want. The other thing is not to get something that you want. A couple years ago, I woke up one morning and I thought I was seeing better. I suddenly went, what's that all about? Followed by a little sense of disappointment. I actually sat back and said, where does this come from? Ray, you would do anything to get your vision back, your hearing back, be independent, drive again. And then I realized that I had changed. If I had given this talk 15 years ago, it would have been filled with resentments of all the people that turned their back on me. But today it's filled with gratitude. The proverbial kick in the stomach was the kick in the pants I needed to get back on my feet. I also learned that I changed how I pray. I used to pray to get my vision and my hearing loss back. But today, my prayers are to give me the strength to get through my day, live life on life's terms, and please do the same for my loved ones. Give us this day our daily bread. I also pray to have the courage to face my fears on a daily basis. And I finally pray to keep the door of my past open just a little bit. So when life gets hard, and it does get hard, I can look at my experiences and know that no matter how heavy the weight will be on my shoulders, the ground will not crumble. When I had to reflect upon the future, this is a tough one. It's a tough one because nobody can predict what's going to happen tomorrow. But I hope that by sharing my experiences, knowing that you can look at your own experiences, that there is hope for a seriously good tomorrow. It's within each and every one of us. I thank you.